Come to the important issue, local anesthetic systemic toxicity. Potency for the more potent is the drug, the more toxic. So let's not, really wish for a drug that acts very fast, that is absolutely potent, and that has a prolonged effect of action. Because if this drug gives us toxicity, the toxicity also will be very potent, will catch up very soon, and will be prolonged, and probably would be very resistant to treat. Well, there is an interesting story here again. What do local anesthetic do with the cardiac sodium channels? They bind to the sodium channels during systole, and they dissociate during the diastole. Bupivacaine dissociates during the diastole so very slowly, even at physiologic rate, that its concentration climbs up, and it cannot just dissociate itself in the given time. Physiologic heart rate is not enough for its complete dissociation. This was a review which answered a couple of questions, that the toxicity is somehow correlated with the given drug, such as bupivacaine, more arrhythmias, lignocaine, left ventricular depressions, resuscitation, drug failure, usually with bupivacaine. So mechanism depends on specific drug. Let's look at the cardiovascular toxicity. Cardiac excitation such as hypertension, tachycardia, ventricular arrhythmias, and then later bradycardia, systole, decreased contractility, and hypotension. Let's take a break. Here is a professor who's going to visit us. Not this one. I just skipped the slide. He is a very passionate person who teaches a lot of cardiac arrhythmias to his students. And let's see what he has to say if bupivacaine concentration keeps increasing in the heart. So this is the atria contracting, that's the ventricle contracting. Atria contracting, ventricular contracting. Okay, now bupivacaine increases in the heart, and now see what happens. A PVC, ventricular tachycardia, flutter, fibrillation, and then let's see what happens with defibrillation. Atria, ventricle, PVC, flutter, fibrillation. Well, if it's not bupivacaine and we are good enough in resuscitation, the heart gets up. Atria, ventricle, atria, ventricle, atria, ventricle again. Now let's see if it's bupivacaine and refuses to get treated. The same story goes. PVC, flutter, fibrillation, overwhelming, just can't be treated. Gives up. That's what is local anesthetic all about, with as far as the cardiotoxicity goes. Now, manifestations of CNS toxicity. Well, vertigo, tinnitus, ominous feelings, circumoral numbness, granulousness, tremors, myoclonic jerks, convulsions, and ultimately depression. In infants, all this can be circumvented, and catastrophic cardiac events could be masked because we do work under general anesthesia. Allergies per se to local anesthetic is known, but they are very rare to cause a grave effect. This is what this particular review showed us. Now let's go to the treatment aspect of it, and I'm going to go a little slow with this. Prevention of LAST, it goes in steps, because that's the best way to treat LAST. How do we inject? How much do we use? Are intravascular markers indeed useful in prevention of LAST? Which modality we use in prevention of LAST, whether it's ultrasound, PNS, is the literature saying indeed something about it? So this was the practice advisory given by ASRA. So how do we inject? Of course, we aspirate either its needle or the catheter, and 1C is what is being given to it. How to inject? Use incremental injections in the aliquots of 3 to 5 ml, stop for one circulatory time and go ahead. With fixed needle approaches such as PNS or paresthesia, wait for one circulatory time, but please also look into the fact that moving of needle during the waiting period might take you away from the end motor response point. Circulation time may be increased with lower extremity. How do we inject? Prevention of intravascular injection is perhaps best accomplished with combination of ultrasound and epinephrine. This is what this review said. How much do we inject? The lowest effective dose possible. Are intravascular markers indeed useful? Yes, they are recommended, although they are imperfect because we haven't lost anything by using them. Epinephrine of more than 10 micrograms per ml in adults increases the heart rate by 10 beats per minute and blood pressure, systolic, 10 to 15. In children also, it does show an increase in heart rate and systolic blood pressure, but the dose here is 0.5 micrograms. Well, once micrograms per kg is what I meant. Once the toxicity has set in, how do we now treat? Airway management, circulatory support, promoting the diminution of the systemic effects of local anesthetic. Let's see how we do that. Primacy of airway management need not be told to the group under this roof today. Control of seizures, of course, by benzodiazepines, propofol with certain cautions, thiopentol, drug of choice, yes, and persistent seizure, even a small dose of dexamethasone might be useful if we are not able to ventilate because of the seizures. Persistent seizures, propofol, of course, should be avoided. We'll come to the reasons why. Treatment of cardiac arrest. There are certain points that have to be noted here. Advanced cardiac life support with following modifications have been recommended by the ASRA right now. If epinephrine is used, small initial doses are used, that is 10 to 100 microgram boluses in adults. Vasopressin is not recommended. Avoid calcium channel blockers and adrenergic receptor blockers. If ventricular arrhythmias do develop, amiodarone is preferred. Lipid emulsion therapy. Now, this is what everybody is recommending. Let's see how. When do we start the lipid emulsion? Consider administration at the first sign of last. Dosages 1.5 ml per kg of 20% lipid emulsion, followed by 0.2 ml per kg per minute of infusion, continued at least for 10 minutes after the stability is being attended. If circulatory stability is not up to the way we wanted it to be, the infusion can be increased. They can be redosed with the boluses can be again given, and approximately 10 ml per kg lipid emulsion for 30 minutes is recommended as the upper limit. In infants, there's just one case report. 3 ml per kg stat bolus has been used. Rationale for lipid therapy, it acts as a lipid sink, it just pulls up the bupivacaine or whichever local anesthetic that is now sitting on the sodium channel of the heart into itself. Should we stock intralipid? Those who are working with local anesthetics should have intralipid. Its shelf life is quite long. Propofol is not a substitute because it's only 10% and it causes profound hypotension in the doses that are required. Failure to respond to therapy that we've just discussed.